Welcome to ETH, News and Headlines from a Prophetic Perspective. Here at End Time Headlines, our mission is to inform our listeners of the times and seasons in which we are in. In Luke 21:28, we are told, when you begin to see all these things come to pass, lift up your heads. Your redemption is drawing near. And now, founder and pastor of End Time Headlines, Ricky Scapero.
Again, I want to welcome everybody. I'm Ricky Scapero, the founder and pastor of End Time Headlines. And we want to talk about the strongest earthquake that has struck the Tennessee region in 45 years. In fact, this earthquake happened in early morning on 12/12. Now, before we get into this thing, I want to welcome everybody to the broadcast, welcome our YouTube audience. I think it's very interesting that there was two events that took place, and the time frame was interesting. So before we talk about this 12/12 shaking, let me talk about what happened on 11/11 last year in November. Y'all remember, if you follow our ministry, you'll know that we did a report on, there was a strange event that was registered, it was registered on seismic equipment that they use when they register earthquakes and so on and so forth. In fact, this event took place on 11/11, and it sent a ripple effect through the entire earth. And it has stunned seismologists, experts, and so on and so forth, because they can't really, to my knowledge, unless there's an update that I'm not aware of, even to this day, they have still not verified or confirmed what caused this. They said it was not normal as an earthquake. It was not nuclear testing or weapon testing. It was not, they don't believe it was an underground volcano that they can see or pick up, but yet there was a hypothesis that was presented. But again, this took place consequently on 11/11. Now here we are, December, on 12/12, and the early morning, early wee hours of the morning, Tennessee residents were shaken literally out of their bed by a magnitude 4.4 earthquake. Now, all of my Californians, my West Coast folks, this is not a real major earthquake. I mean, it'll shake you up a little bit, knock some dishes off, turn some stuff over, but you guys are more used to that. But I'm going to tell you right now, us Southerners, a 4.4 earthquake in Tennessee is not normal. It just struck about 7 miles northeast of Decatur, Tennessee, which is about 55 miles away from Knoxville, Tennessee. Though there were no immediate reports of damage or injuries, there was reports of light shaking, reported all the way as far as the Atlanta metro area. Folks in Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Kentucky all testified of reporting shaking, and so on and so forth. In fact, I just got off the phone with a good friend of mine from Cleveland, Tennessee, and him and his family was awakened by this earthquake. And I asked him, because I myself, in my 41 years of living, have never experienced an earthquake that large. So I had to ask him. I said, and his name's Chad. I said, Chad, tell me what it felt like. What did you hear? What did you see? He said, well, he said, at first it woke me up. And he said, I didn't know what it was. He said, I thought I was dreaming, or I thought I was having some type of, something was going on, maybe, something outside or whatever the case may be. He said his whole bed was shaking. He said, I was about to start rebuking a devil. He said, I thought there was some kind of a demon or something trying to shake my bed or something. He said, then as I was waking up, he said, all of us, and this is the thing that got me. I understand the shaking and all this, but this next part is very phenomenal to me. And all you guys have experienced earthquakes, and you know this, just bear with folks like me that's never been in this. I've been in tornadoes, but I've never been in an earthquake of this magnitude. But he said all of a sudden, he said it was like a almost sound like a thunderstorm taking place outside. And he thought to himself, well, that doesn't make any sense because the weather forecast, there was no storms in the forecast. So he said it sounded just like a thunderstorm. He said it sounded like wind. It sounded like thunder. He said there was the rumbling and all this was happening. So he went out, and so they went out, and lo and behold, they get out there, and when he walked out there, of course, there was no thunderstorm, and then it registered to him that it was an earthquake. And then, of course, he turned on the news, and there was many other reports of this. So let me read a little bit about this. The USA Today reported that the Eastern Tennessee seismic zone is one of the most active earthquake areas in the region, extending across the state into northwest Georgia and northeastern Alabama. Now, this runs through what's called the New Madrid fault line. Now, I want to talk about that in a second and why I think this is interesting. But according to the Weather Channel, this recent event, the one that took place on 12/12, was the strongest earthquake registered in 45 years. The last one was registered in November of 1973. That was before I was born. So that's very interesting. Now, consequently, what's interesting is only almost 4 days, somebody say 4 days, almost 4 days to the mark, 207 years ago, on the New Madrid fault line, which, by the way, runs right through the regions that we just talked about. You've got Indiana, you've got Tennessee, you've got North Carolina, you got South Carolina, you got Alabama, you got Missouri, you got Kentucky. All these regions are right there through the New Madrid fault line. In December 16th, 1811, through March of 1812, there were over 2,000 earthquakes. However, 3 of these earthquakes are on the list of America's top earthquakes. The first one on December 16th, 1811 was a magnitude 8.1 on the Richter scale. The second one was January 23rd, 1812, and a 7.8 on February 7th, 1812. As a result of these 3 mega earthquakes in this zone, so all my Southerners, pay attention to this. As a result of this, strange occurrences took place that changed the geographics of the entire region. The Mississippi River ran backwards. Huge cracks and fissures opened up. Seismic these giant golf ball sized, what's called tar balls or sand boils and fissures, were shot out like missiles. There was lights, they called them earthquake lights, which was flashing lights that came from the ground caused by the quartz crystals being squeezed and the pressure of the tectonic plates squeezing together. Warm water, was where there was water that was cold, it heated up because, again, of the quartz being shaken and the activity of that causing that. There was smog produced, there was thunder, and there was strange behavior by animals. Domestic animals became wild. Snakes came out of the ground, hibernation, flocks, ducks, and geese, and everything else went crazy. And I remember this happened in the Boxing Day, the Boxing Day earthquake and Christmas of, I want to say, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 2004, maybe somewhere around there, 2004, 2005. That struck Indonesia and Sumatra, and it killed hundreds of thousands of people. But there was animals that was reported, and there was reports of them exhibiting these strange behavior. The birds flew in the opposite direction of the earthquake where it took place, and the tsunami would be generated. There was animals running up shore away from this as well. So again, so you have, this is very interesting. So I just want to put this together, something to think about today. you had the event that took place in 11/11 recently that is still unexplained, and we still can't figure out what that was, and they're still trying to get to the bottom of that. Then you had Anchorage, Alaska, got struck recently with a very powerful earthquake that caused a lot of damage. And now here we are on 12/12, and Tennessee just got the second largest earthquake in the region in 45 years, nearly, and only 4 days away from the anniversary of the 207-year anniversary of the New Madrid earthquakes, or the beginning of the series of quakes that was so powerful that it even was felt as far away as New York City, Boston, Montreal, and Washington, D.C. In fact, church bells rang in Boston from these earthquakes in 1811, 1812. Now, I want to close with this. When I was putting this together, and I knew I was going to talk about this, I remember, and I pulled this up in my notes on Facebook. So there's some good things about social media is if you post something publicly on Facebook, and this is good or bad, but in the event that it can be used as a journal. So I typed this in, and sure enough, it was there on the 9th of September 2011. I had a dream, and I documented this. Some of our followers that has been with us all the way from the beginning, when we started this ministry, you'll remember me talking about this dream. This will stir this up in remembrance. But on that night of September 9th of 2011, I had a dream that night. And in the dream, I was walking down a street, and it was like a market street. It looked very familiar to, if any of you have ever been to places like Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, you've got a main road, and then the cars can go, one way and this way, and then on each side of the road, you've got a sidewalk and a sidewalk, and then running down this side and running down that side, you have storefront stores, restaurants, novelty shops. You've got different things like that, and they all have like awnings hanging over and lights and just different demonstrations and so on and so forth. Well, in this dream, I was walking down one of these sidewalks, and it was night. There was people walking around, whatnot. It was at night. It was cold. I believe with all my heart that it was the fall time. I believe it was somewhere around October, if I had to guess, because there was no snow on the ground, and it was cool enough to wear a jacket, but it wasn't cold enough that, people were not discouraged from being out there. If it's 20 degrees, 15 degrees and snow on the ground, people ain't going to be walking around shopping and hanging out in the streets and so on and so forth. So I believe with all my heart it was the fall time of the year. But nevertheless, it was dark. I remember looking up in the dream at the sky, and the sky was very dark, but it was a very clear night. I remember seeing the moon. It was a full moon. There, you could see the stars in the sky, very clear night. And all of a sudden, as I'm walking, the ground underneath me began to shake violently. I remember because in the dream, the ground was shaking so violently in different directions that it was causing my equilibrium to go off. And I remember in the dream, I thought, my goodness, I'm going to have to get out from under these awnings and away from these buildings, and there's really nowhere I can go. There's no table to get under. There's nowhere safe that I can go. So my first instinct was I got to get out into the middle of the street in case some of these buildings fall. If I'm standing underneath this, it's going to collapse right under me. So I remember I ran out to the middle of the street, and by this time, the ground underneath me began to shake so violently that I could no longer keep my footing. And I remember I fell down, and I fell on my back in the dream. And I remember as I was falling down on my back, I looked up. And when I looked up, the ground still shaking, I looked up, and on one of the buildings to the side of me was a huge guitar. It was a very big guitar on the side of the building. And on the side of the guitar were the words Music City. And then I woke up from my dream. And I had to do some research on this and found out from some good friends of mine They believe with all their heart that I saw Nashville, Tennessee. I was there. In this dream, I was in Nashville, Tennessee, where this earthquake hit. I believe, again, this dream is 7 years old. This happened in 2011. I believe that earthquake very well could have been the New Madrid earthquake. Now, they've already said that if this thing blows again, they say not if, I'm sorry, let me correct myself. They said when it blows again, not if, but when, and it's overdue, just like the Cascadian, just like the San Andreas, all these, the Hayward fault, I believe it's called. These fault lines, guys, are all overdue. That's what's scary about this. And it's like an artery system. You know, they all run together. So the one fault line begins to blow, it could cause a seismic chain, you know. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but it's when you know this and you know the history of this region and you know that there's a major fault line called the New Madrid that is directly involved with Alabama, South Carolina, Missouri, North Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, Georgia, all these regions, it will make your ears perk up a little bit. Okay, and they've already said, experts have already come out and they said that when, in the event that this thing happens again, when we are to have, and they said when it happens, not if, but when it does happen, but then the if comes in. When it does happen, and if these earthquakes are anywhere on the scale of the ones in 1811 and 1812 of that magnitude, they said the same earthquakes today, if it were to hit in the same region today, the death toll would be unimaginable because of the population, because of the growth, the buildings, the structure, the industrial that's been built, the commercial that's been built, and all that is, they said it would be absolutely catastrophic. So it's very interesting. This is happening in almost, again, listen to these dates again, 11/11, 12/12, nearly 4 days to the 207-year mark of the New Madrid fault line. Come on, guys. It's time to pay attention to these things. Okay, so I thought this was newsworthy to report this tonight. Again, this is End Time Headlines bringing you this special report of this 12/12 shaking in Tennessee. That was felt all the way as far as Atlanta, Georgia, and many other regions. So again, as always, we appreciate you guys taking the time to come on here and listening to this broadcast. Again, I encourage you to share this with some folks that would think perhaps that they would find this interesting, or whatever the case may be. endtimeheadlines.org, endtimeheadlines.com. That's going to be our main website. That's where you can find us. That's where you can subscribe to us. If you guys are watching by YouTube, go there, subscribe to us. You'll get one newsletter every single day in your inbox, and you can keep up with all of our news and headlines from a prophetic perspective, as well as our informative, encouraging, and edifying messages that we give you throughout the week. Again, so we appreciate you guys taking the time to come on here. We love you guys. We appreciate you, and we will see you tomorrow.
We hope that today's word was a source of blessing and encouragement to you and your family. End Time Headlines is a ministry that provides weekly teachings to equip believers and inform the discerning of the signs and seasons in which we are in. If you would like to help support this ministry with a gift of any amount, you can do so electronically by visiting our website at endtimeheadlines.org, where you can sow a one-time gift or set up monthly partnership. If you would like to give by check or money order, you can do so by writing to End Time Headlines, P.O. Box 2312, Clarksville, Indiana 47131. Thank you for your generous support and partnership to End Time Headlines.